Donuts. I got donuts. I got...
Donut? What's a donut?
Donuts. It looks wrong, but it is so right. Oh, yeah.
And we're live for another episode of Duff and Donuts. I am your host, Kien, not Keith, and I am here today with my lovely co-host, Bree. This time around, we're talking about Season 1, Episode 4. I should have my notes on here. There's no disgrace like home. And so, This is a very interesting episode to me because I think this is an episode we both enjoy.
This is one of those iconic episodes that...
We don't have any conflicting opinions on one another. But also, I am again drinking a Sioux City. Like last time, I'm drinking a Sioux City sarsaparilla.
Well, last time you were more so drinking the
Great Value.
Great
but now
Value,
I got the better Sioux City sarsaparilla, so you guys should try it. We're not sponsored.
From an actual bottle. So this episode, the chalkboard gag in this one was, I will not burp in class. Kind of going back to Bart's bad boy roots. And then the couch
that sounds
gag.
So weird. I'm sorry, like bad boy roots.
Well, I mean, from the beginning.
He's a bad boy.
He's a bad boy. But the couch gag again was a simple one. They all sit on the couch together and Homer falls off. There's just, for some reason, not enough space for him this time. I personally thought the couch looked smaller. Not sure what the deal with that was, but it was just a simple one.
I think it was supposed to, like, play off that.
Right, like, oh, there's no seat for you this time. The episode starts off with Bart and Lisa shoving each other. Homer asks them what they're fighting about, and they're like, we're fighting over who loves you more. And it turns out they were like, you love him more. No, you love him more. So it was kind of like the opposite of what, you would think it would be. Which I found pretty typical of children. Certain families, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like I had that. Again, I feel like this is nice. This is like one of those series where like it relates to everyone, mostly everyone. If you were born like super rich, you probably don't feel it, but like I think it relates to everyone.
And then one thing I noticed right away about Homer is he's wearing a different outfit. He's got red shorts on, and his white shirt has red stripes. Yep.
Marge is also wearing an opposite coinciding outfit. Hers is orange shorts with orange stripes.
Is it orange?
Mm-hmm.
I literally just watched it, and I was thinking pink for some reason, but
Oh, that's not a good one.
Yeah. No, pink.
It's pink shorts.
It's pink.
Orange,
Okay,
pink
yeah.
shirt.
I'm right. I was like, wait a second. I was like, I'm thinking pink here.
Yeah, but there's an orange shirt, so I'm like half right.
That still looks pink to me.
It was orange.
Okay, all right. We're gonna say it's orange.
It was orange.
But yeah, it's fun to see main characters in different clothing because I do know, especially back in the day, that had to be animated, and it was really hard for them to switch that up. You know what I mean?
That's why you essentially see even in modern anime, not a lot of them change their outfits.
Right, it's just one. Shout out though to that As Told by Ginger show that was on Nickelodeon when I was a teenager. They actually changed clothes every episode, so good for those animators. But anyway, diving in, the reason they're wearing different clothes is they're going to a company picnic for the power plant. So Marge makes a Jell-O dessert because Homer has it in his head that that's what Mr. Burns really likes.
There's 5 Jell-O. He brings 5 Jell-O.
He brings 5 of them, yeah. When they arrive, you can tell the outside of Burns' manor, it looks different than what it does later in the series. Definitely a little more cheery. They kind of make him out more like a vampire aesthetic,
evil man.
Yeah, evil, more evil in the future. I think they kind of play on that with the way his house looks.
Mm-hmm.
In this one, as we mentioned in our last episode, Smithers, he's actually yellow this time.
Mm-hmm.
But they did keep his hair blue.
Yep.
So even after correcting the skin tone, his hair would remain blue, which I thought was interesting.
Again, my favorite thing about this is the gag of the, hey, Mr. Burns, we brought you a gelatin dessert. He's like, oh, who brought it in their minds that I like gelatin dessert? And there's a whole, like, a room full of these gelatin desserts.
They're just everywhere. And at one point, we actually see a gelatin power plant.
Yeah.
Later on in the picnic. I thought that was funny.
I love how, like, Mr. Burns is, like, the typical boss where he's like, I need a card. And, like, in the card, it's, like, Homer, Marge, Lisa, Bart, but he calls him Brat, and then Maggie is still under his expected.
This one she wasn't.
She wasn't?
I thought that it was gonna be that, so I like actually started typing that in my notes. But then I think that's actually a later episode where he's like, and this must be, and then he like says expecting.
Homer.
Yeah, is that the one?
That's Dancing Homer.
Yeah, he's like expecting, but yeah, no. In this one, it was just he called him Brat instead of Bart, and Homer goes with it. He's like, don't correct the man, Brat. What else I found funny about that is we're seeing why Homer is being so anal about everyone behaving, because we see a little boy complain that, you know, he had to miss his Little League game, and Mr. Burns says to Smithers, you know, fire that man. You know, he doesn't want troublemakers at his company, so Homer wants everyone to be on their best behavior.
So then they're in the mansion, and Bart makes the joke of like, yeah, he said to act like you're at home, Dad, so you can scratch yourself and wear your underwear.
And, you know, he's like, problem, Simpson? And Homer's like, oh, no, you know, just congratulating the boy on a good joke on his old man.
It sounds weird, but again, no child choking.
Oh, yeah, this episode and last episode, he didn't strangle Bart, did he?
I'm not promoting child choking people.
I want to know when it happened,
I do
though.
too.
I'm very interested to know when that started, you know.
It's alluded in the Christmas special.
Yes, it is, by the sound effect of it.
Yeah.
But, so anyway, Marge is, you know, she has Maggie while Homer goes off with Bart and Lisa, and she meets this...
Goes off, he's chasing them.
Yeah, he chases them. They're terrorizing swans. There's this random woman who's like, hey, let's drop the kids in daycare and go get a drink. And Marge is like, I don't know if I feel good about leaving them with no supervision. So the girl turns on the TV and it's the happy little elves playing. So that was their supervision for the kids.
Which is kind of like that, like, it was kind of a play on, like, what was going on at that time.
You know what? That actually reminds me of this horrible babysitter that my mom took us to at one point. You know, she was a working single mom, and this older woman had a daycare out of her basement. And pretty much she sat in a chair the entire time and just kind of was like, go watch TV, you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't really supervised, which I feel is actually kind of like a nod back to the way that people used to be in the 80s and 90s. It was leave the kids to themselves, you know? Yeah. Nowadays, obviously that wouldn't fly, you know? But, so they prelude to the sack race. They were saying that Mr. Burns always has to win. And it kind of cuts between Homer and Marge for the next few scenes.
Homer's trying to chase the kids, and because Bart is terrorizing the geese, and Lisa's playing the fountain, and, like, to hide from Homer, she pretends to be one of the fountain pieces.
She's, like, blowing the water out of her. Yeah, that was super funny.
And then Marge is getting a drink with the ladies.
Right, and she I don't know, honestly, if because she mentioned I'm not much of a drinker, but then, like, at the point, she's like, I don't want to alarm anyone, but there seems to be a little bit of alcohol in this punch. So I don't know if she knew it was spiked or not.
I thought, because she said to get a glass of wine, didn't she, in the beginning?
I want to say she said punch.
Okay.
I want to believe she called it punch.
I think maybe it's because, like, she took a drink and kept drinking it. There was, like, a semi-real moment for me when, like, people were talking about their kids.
Oh, and that one woman was so insufferable. She's, like, talking about which kid she loves more. Right. And how she uses their grades as, like, a tiebreaker, but they both got straight A's.
Those are, like, real things that have happened, like, in my childhood and life, like, hearing that kind of stuff. So it's just kind of like, that one really was like, yeah, that's a real thing that happens where people, like...
The sibling competition...
No, like, those parents that are like, oh, my Jonathan gets straight A's.
Right.
But, like, you know the kid, and you're like, oh.
And Jonathan smokes dope out of
it.
Yeah,
like, you don't really know.
Yeah, you don't know Jonathan.
Yeah, so it's just, I thought it was a funny thing. And then like Homer is like trying to keep it all together.
Right, because you know, Bart tries to win the sack race that he told him don't uh, beat Mr. Burns in it. But what's funny to me is it's a father-son sack race, and of course Mr. Burns, I mean, he does have a son, but that's later. He's in the sack alone. You know, he doesn't have someone beside him. He doesn't have a kid by him. You know, so why is he even participating? I found that kind of funny.
He's the head of the host.
He had to win, yeah. But Homer literally has to like stop Bart by
Bart's like I got this,
tackling him pretty much.
Well, like he gets like an extra couple of steps, and then the people have to do a step behind him. Continue.
Right, because he's like go, Mr. Burns, and then he shoots the starting gun off. So they were already behind.
Yeah, it's ridiculously rhythmic. So.
Right, everyone's like hopping in a line, like rhythmically behind him. So then after the sack race debacle, Homer grabs both Bart and Lisa, and then he sees Marge singing. She's drunkenly singing a song about the wine. And she falls into his arms. And he's like, well, Mr. Burns is about to make a toast. And she says, well, I'm not much of a drinker. And he's like, you picked a wonderful time to start. You know, but it's
dance
true
number, though, that was going on.
Right, that was so fun. They were all like choreographed, you know, like, but they're all sloppy. Like, it's super funny. But it is really out of character for Marge. I want to say she was very out of character in this episode, and I think they had to get her drunk in order for that to happen, because otherwise she was like, you know, the good mom, the good wife, you know, that kind of thing.
Right.
I love when Mr. Burns announces that it's time for everyone to leave.
Yeah, he brings up the hounds.
Yeah, he's like, you know, the hounds will be released in 10 minutes, you know, which is a running gag, of course, as everyone knows. On the way out, a man gets a kiss from his son, and, you know, Homer overhears Mr. Burns and Smithers talking about, like, ooh, keep an eye on that guy. We have big things in store for him. So Homer tries to get a kiss from Bart.
Yep, and then he's like, you stop the fake cornball routine.
Right, he sees that same dad at the parking lot, and he's like, oh, you know, we don't have to put on an act anymore, and then he realizes, like, oh, hey, that guy wasn't really acting. Him and his family are, like, you know, opening doors for each other. The wife offers to drive. Then this part's cool to me. I loved this look of it. He imagines his family as like demons.
Yeah, because the other family's like super holy.
And he's imagining them as angels.
Yeah.
I know they couldn't use Flanders for that because, you know, Flanders doesn't obviously work at the power plant, but that kind of like made me think of like the comparison between like Homer and the Flanders, you know.
So the next day, this is interesting. They're eating TV dinners, which is a total 90s thing.
Right. And Marge was totally out of her element. Never have I seen her, like, lay on the couch like that with her feet up. You know, she's always sitting prim and proper. Mm-hmm. So maybe it was the hangover. Who knows?
And so Homer tries to pray, and everyone is like, are we done yet?
Yeah, they're just trying to eat their food, and
then Homer goes...
He pretty much, like, badmouths them to God.
Yeah, and then Bart's like, all right, let's eat.
Right, and Marge calls him out on it, like, you know, how long do we have to sit here listening to you badmouth us to the man upstairs, you know? And Bart actually says he does the don't have a cow. Don't have a cow, Dad.
He's done it.
Yeah, I do believe that is the first time we have heard that from him. So little interesting quirk. They decide to go spy on other people's families. Mm-hmm. They decide to like go around the neighborhood, literally peeking in people's windows to see if all families are like that or not. This is
weird because I thought they would have done the Flanders in this one.
I thought, yeah, you would think so.
That would have been the one where I think they would have done it.
It was two random families,
like,
though.
A whole like spread from like a 1950s magazine family that has like a turkey. Grandpa, grandma, they're all smiling.
It reminded me a lot of, like, the original How the Grinch Stole Christmas, like, with the Who's doing their little Who feast. Mm-hmm. That's what that reminded me of, at least, like, the animation, the way they were drawn and stuff. Mm-hmm. But the second family that they go peek on... they see them talking and they can't figure out what they're talking about, and the kid's like talking about how he heard noises outside, and the dad's like, oh yeah, better get the gun, and they literally get chased off the property with a shotgun.
That's my favorite thing, because they're like, they're so normal. They're having a conversation. I wonder what that conversation is about. Dad, I hear rustlings in the bush. Get the guns, son.
Right,
And
he's like, he's probably gonna go get the slippers for his old man or something. And yeah, no, it's get the gun.
Yep, and then like, Marge is like, we didn't really have to do this, and
well, they go back to their own house, but for some reason they don't realize it's their house, and they look in the window and they're like, look at this place, what a dump.
And Homer's like, I just stepped in this sap's flower bed, and Marge is like, Homer, this is our house, and he's like, no.
And then she asks him, are you coming in? And he's like, no, I'm going to Moe's.
So when we go to Moe's Tavern, he's sad, like, you can tell. And Moe's asking him about it, and,
And we see Eddie and Lou come in.
Which Lou again.
Lou is yellow.
Lou
is yellow in this episode, and Eddie's a little more coherent.
Yeah.
I feel like Eddie is kind of supposed to be like the dumb cop,
I don't think so, though. Like, they're both smarter than Wiggum.
Yes, definitely. No, but, I mean, of the two of them, he's kind of like just, I wouldn't say professional. You know what I mean? Like, he's just kind of like,
My favorite thing about this is they're like, oh, we're just trying to find some peeping toms in the neighborhood, and the dog starts barking
because it recognizes like Homer's smell apparently or something, and he's like, oh, I have sausages in my pocket.
And he's like, oh, very normal, come on, let's go.
Right, like they didn't question that.
Like, then like Barney's bad mouthing his kids, and this is, I've never seen this, like they get into a fight apparently.
Right, they start punching each other, and Homer goes down.
About the same time as a boxing match is going on.
In the background,
And then Dr. Monroe's Family Therapy Center pulls up. Family bliss or double your money back. And Homer's like, this is interesting. And he goes back to gets an idea to make his family normal.
And I believe, is this the first time we're seeing Itchy and Scratchy?
Yes, it is.
Okay, because I noticed that when he came home to tell them about the therapy session, they were all watching Itchy and Scratchy. And it was a very tame Itchy and Scratchy by their usual stuff.
Right.
It was just Itchy put a giant bomb inside Scratchy's mouth and it just exploded.
Wow, okay, yeah,
that's very tame compared to what they usually are. So he explains the therapy to the family, and he explains that it's $250 for it. So they go ahead and they dig into the college fund, which turned out to only be $88.50.
Back then there probably might have been some money.
Not for 3 kids.
Right.
I mean, they didn't specify that it was any one specific college fund.
I love Lisa's like, this is why I have to take partial
scholarships.
Yeah.
I mean, she's gonna have to take a full one, especially nowadays.
So now they sell their TV.
Well, they pawn it. Yeah. They sell it to the pawn shop.
My favorite thing, and Marge's like, why couldn't we pawn my engagement ring? He's like, we need something that's at least $150.
Right, which shows you how much her ring was.
Probably was.
Shout out to the throwback episode where he proposes with an onion ring, though.
Yeah. So they go to Dr. Monroe's therapy treatment, and I picked up on something every episode.
That I did not notice.
One thing that Brittany didn't pick up on.
It's true.
And this time, that perfect family that was in the beginning was actually in the therapy, so they're not perfect at all. So in your face,
and they all look miserable.
Their family is perfect.
I did not realize. I was like, "Are you sure?" And then like I actually like Googled it to be sure that, because we don't want to like spread misinformation. And obviously other fans probably better than me have noticed it before, and they put like the side by side. The upper frame is them in the car, and then the lower frame is them sitting at the therapy. I love that he saw that. I was like, good for you, because I love that so much. Dr. Monroe tells them, he wants to dig deep into their head and find the root of their unhappiness. And everyone draws Homer. But Homer, who wasn't paying attention, drew like an airplane fight.
Yeah.
He's like, I wasn't paying attention.
And then they're like, Monroe calls him an ogre, and Lisa and Marge's like, no, he's not. And Bart's like, yeah, he is.
Yeah, Bart's like, oh yeah.
So they're about to get aggressive, and then Monroe's like, let's just use something else.
Let's use these aggression therapy mallets. And obviously they're padded, you know, because it's supposed to be healthy.
Yeah. I don't think that's healthy at all, though, to hit your family.
No, definitely not. But I mean, it's better than the alternative.
Right. No, 100%.
But Bart's like, you know, they work much better without the padding, Doc. And he, like, hits him in the shin. Dr. Monroe's like,
all right, another one. And then he goes and that's when they go to the electrotherapy, isn't
it? The electric generator. They're hooked up to each other. They are wired in. They have buttons in front of them. Everyone can shock each other. His idea behind it was that if someone hurts you mentally, you hurt them physically, and eventually you learn not to do either, I guess. It sounds kind of twisted. I think they were really reaching with that.
Yeah.
But, you know,
I love that scene, though. Just, like, at first it's just them, like, getting revenge. And then it's just basically Maggie just pressing shiny red buttons.
Right, because Bart starts it kind of with the whole, my finger slipped, and, you know, then Marge zaps both Bart and Lisa, and then Maggie's just, like, having a heyday with it. But obviously, with them misusing the machine, it causes a power surge throughout Springfield, and including in the lobby, which ends up making all the rest of the patients leave.
Yeah. No, it was really funny. And then, like, you know, the receptionist comes in and she's like, you know, they're all left. And Dr. Monroe's like, no. And Homer's like, hey, you said
double money back.
And he's like, fine.
And he, like, begrudgingly gives him $500, which at the time, you know, that's a lot of money. So Marge, you know, asks, are we going to go and get our TV back? And all this, like, wholesome music starts playing in the background. Like, they're all happy because they, like, earned the money. They essentially earned it by being dysfunctional, but they were all just really happy about the nice surprise that they got $500. Homer mentions they're gonna get a good TV, a nice TV, and even a little TV cart to wheel it into the dining room on holidays.
Which they never did.
Not that I've seen, no.
So.
And yeah, and then they're just happy again.
Yeah,
they're just kind of like, oh well, you know, the therapy didn't work, but we're happy, we're good, we got money.
This one was the only one where all the characters were kind of like turned on personality wise, because usually like Lisa's the
smart,
Marge is getting drunk, and Homer isn't supposed to be the voice of reason for his family.
Right, which again, a callback to something we mentioned in the first episode was it was originally supposed to be Homer as the everyday average Joe, and his family was supposed to be kind of like the dysfunctional ones, but he takes a giant role in the dysfunction of the family, obviously. And usually it's Marge that's kind of the voice of reason. And then later on, Lisa, we mentioned about her too that, you know, while she has her intelligence, she's still acting like a kid in these first few episodes. You know, she's smart, but she's still a kid.
Yep, and so this episode was featured in Die Hard 2.
This episode was?
Yep.
Really?
Yep.
I didn't see that, so how did they do it?
No. In the movie Die Hard 2.
Uh-huh.
It was on, like, a background TV.
Oh, like I said, I didn't see Die Hard 2.
Yeah, it was just on a background
TV.
TV.
Okay, that's fun.
Yeah.
Good for
this
them.
marked as the first appearance of Yellow Smithers, as we said.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2006, this episode is ranked number 10 in Matt Groening's list of top 10 episodes of all time.
Told you it's iconic.
It's very iconic, apparently. So when they did the Dr. Monroe thing, he's actually supposed to be a parody of Laurel and Hardy, which were these therapists in the 90s. And the way they would, like, try to have families, like, release tension was to throw pies at each other. So they wanted a more sadistic kind of, like, that's why they
whack each other with these. Yeah, that's fun.
There's not a lot of trivia here, actually. There's First the Hound. Dr. Monroe's phone number is 1-800-555-HUGS.
Hugs?
And the song that Marge was singing is a parody of Home Sweet Home.
Is it?
From The Wizard of Oz, yeah.
Oh, I didn't even pick that up, and I loved Wizard of Oz too. So
When Marge gets drunk, she also sings Dean Martin's "Hey Brother, Pour Me the Wine." Yep. So let's do some episode wrap up. I really enjoy this episode. This is a really fun episode. Yeah, it takes the characters in
a different
direction that, like, you know, aren't going to be like that in the future. But again, this is season 1. They're finding their footing, you know. So, you know,
it's funny to me that it was so iconic,
right?
But like they didn't go that direction with the characters. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of a, you know, but maybe that's why it's so iconic,
right?
Because of that reason, it's just different.
Very
it has a different feel to it.
So I'm gonna give this a solid 9. Like, I really, really like this episode. I think there's a lot of fun gags in this episode. There's a lot of, like, touching moments. There's a lot of, like, again, this is one of those episodes where it's like touching moment comedy, touching moment comedy, touching moment comedy that I can really appreciate as a person who did do writing and things like that. I can really appreciate that kind of stuff.
I'm gonna go with a 9 as well, definitely. For basically the same reasons, but also just because, like, I love the message that, you know, you don't have to be perfect. You know, your family doesn't have to be the perfect family. And, like, you mentioned earlier, you know, that quote-unquote perfect guy from earlier with his family was in therapy, too. So it's like, even if you think you and your family have this whole thing going on, like, you know, everyone's just doing their best,
yeah,
you know?
I don't think any family's perfect.
No.
Like, that's not me being like, I hate my family, they're not perfect. No, like, I do not think any family is perfect.
No, definitely not.
But you try your best and you love them very much.
And you have your moments, you know,
right.
Like Homer had a moment of clarity in this one, you know,
right.
And his last one he did as well when he wasn't feeling like he was providing for his family well enough. So we are definitely seeing a lot of human emotions
features in
there.
Homer.
Yeah, definitely.
So I give it, like I said, 9. We both give it a 9, so that's pretty different.
It's a great episode.
For our last few of our episodes. So, thank you for listening, guys. Like we said, these are probably not going to be coming out bi-weekly because we want you guys to know that there's over 638 episodes. I don't think there's any way we're going to get past season 10, and if we do, that might be because people will listen more. So, like, share, subscribe, do what you got to do, hit the tweets and tumble them.
Yeah, just share them with a random friend, you know, whatever.
Friends, you know, like,
I roped my sister into listening to us. Yeah.
So, you know, yeah, don't forget. You guys have a good day, night, evening, whatever you guys are listening to it. And, you know, come back for more when we talk about episode 5.
Yeah.
5.
No, wait.
Yes.
5.
Yes.
You had me questioning it. I was like, what?